everyone. My name is Alan Witowski. Amy and Lisa asked me to participate in this tribute to their mother. We know each other for many, many years because our children grew up together at Beth Am, of blessed memory. Beth Am was absorbed by B'nai Shurin about 20 years ago. But we have wonderful memories of Beth Am and of the wonderful relationships that were built there. And I think I have to say that we're here today remembering someone who was really quite responsible for all of that. The Kossiver parents were co-chairs of the Youth Commission, and they were very much committed and involved with the youth and bringing them into the synagogue and giving them wonderful, wonderful experiences. We're here to pay tribute to a special person. Jewish people respond to death with 3 words. In English, it is praised is the judge of truth. Baruch Dayan Haemet. Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach. Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. The Lord has given and the Lord has taken. Praise be the name of the Lord. Mizmor LeDavid, Psalm 15. Adonai mi yagur b'ohalecha, mi yishkon b'har kodshecha, olech tamim u'foel tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo, lo ragal al leshono lo asa l're'ehu ra'a, v'cherpa lo nasa al krovo, נבזה בעיניו, נמאס ואת יראי אדוני יכבד. נשבע להרע ולא ימיר. כספו לא נתן בנשך, ושוחד על נקי לא לקח. עושה אלה, לא ימות לעולם. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity. Do what is right. Speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere the Lord. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own. Then shall you stand firm forever. Eshet chayil mi yimtza, ברחוק מפנים מכרע, בטח בה לב בעלה, ושלל לא יחסר, גמלת הוא טוב ולא רע, כל ימי חייה. What a precious find is a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond rubies. Her husband puts his confidence in her and lacks nothing. She's good to him all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy, extends her hand to the poor. She's clothed with strength and splendor. She looks to the future cheerfully. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She oversees the activities of her household and never eats the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her, and her husband praises her and says, many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Extol her for the fruit of her hand. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. Deanne was born prematurely. That really did not affect her life. However, at the age of 2, she started to wear glasses. And even much later, when she had cataract surgery and didn't need glasses anymore, she insisted she wanted to wear them anyway. So glasses and a smile on her face were something that was permanent. She was devoted to family. She was devoted to friends. Friends that she had from elementary school, from high school, from college. Throughout her life, her friends became central to her, as did her family. She didn't have local relatives, but that didn't make any difference. They traveled to relatives. And the kids called their good friends aunt and uncle. As I said, the commitment to Beth Am, to the congregation, was a complete. They were involved and committed. And they were wonderful parents to Lisa and Amy. Deanne insisted that they have the right values, that they are strong and tough. She felt that she was not tough. Wrong. She was, but she wanted to make sure that her daughters would be tough. She succeeded. She raised 2 wonderful daughters, committed to the values that they learned from their parents. She loved to garden. She raised show dogs. She was an excellent cook and kept a beautiful house. Though they didn't have a lot of money, the girls said they got everything they needed and more. Eshet Chayil. She was a woman of valor. I'd like to call upon Lisa and Amy to share some words with us.
Maybe that's it.
Grab it. That's okay. That's okay.
Most of you don't know, I don't like public speaking at all, but I started this eulogy 8 years ago after her last stroke. In 2005, I moved back to Cleveland right after my father was hit by a truck at a BP station. My mother was healing from a torn meniscus, so I could see better. I remember watching them walking to their bedrooms, the two of them were such a sight. My dad with his head bandaged, looking like Frankenstein's monster, alongside my mother creeping down the hall with a walker. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Prior to this, my parents were planning to buy a condo in Florida for the three of us. I would pay the rent. But they weren't buying it outright for me, and they were going to be snowbirds. Instead, my dad asked me to move back to Cleveland, and I did, with no regrets. From there, we all know how the story goes. Shortly after my 40th birthday, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and died 4 months later. Then it was me and my mom, and of course, our menagerie of animals. When my dad was dying, he called me into the bedroom just like a mafia king, and he whispered 3 things to me. Join Park Synagogue so mommy will go to shul. I wouldn't compromise for her is what he said to me. Watch over her and say Kaddish for him. And please don't put her in a nursing home. Keep her safe in her home. After my father passed, saying Kaddish for him was one of the hardest things I've ever done. 11 months, 3 times a day, no matter where I went, no matter how I felt, I said those prayers. During storms, vacation, work meetings, nothing was more important. I needed to raise his neshama. Today, 18 years later, I can now say the hardest thing I ever did was my mother's caretaker. My dad was so fastidious. He was compliant about taking pills. He took care of his appearance. He sometimes took 2 showers a day, and he always smelled terrific. Mom, on the other hand, stubbornly resisted taking her medication, and as she got older, she refused to shower, going weeks without, and responding to me, and then my sisters saying, I will, or tomorrow, and sometimes it would be 8 weeks later. She still hadn't showered. And it was not a battle. And while taking care of my mom would be difficult, it was also rewarding. There were many times when I broke down in tears of frustration or sadness. There were many more times of joy and laughter. We watched TV together. It was always a fun experience. She did enjoy looking at hot men. She was an incorrigible flirt, even batting her eyelashes at any EMT who would come to the house and help her. She would say, you're so strong, I don't want to hurt you. Oh, you're so handsome. And I'm like, oh, she has no game. And I just, one of them is right here too, that helped her right before. In 2014, when Mom had her first stroke, she went to rehab for 2 weeks and hated every minute of it. After that, I moved into her house. And I remember when she went off to Menorah Park in a bus for the first outpatient rehab, and I felt like I was sending her to boot camp, and she hated it. But whenever I could, I would surprise her and pick her up, and we would do lunch, and I would bring her home. Her next stroke was in February of 2017. That was a scary one, a burst blood vessel, and I didn't know she would survive. And while in the ICU, she kept calling for me, Amy, help me, Amy, help me. And I took the time, I made the decision to take care of her full time after that for the next 2 years. During the pandemic years, we faced new challenges. Mom got sepsis, she didn't understand why we had to wear a mask, and she spent 7 days at Hillcrest with me coming once a day with a mask. And I could stay up to 4 hours. She spent 8 weeks in Montefiore with only window-to-window contact. I was very thankful that her short-term memory was not so great because she didn't remember me not visiting her sometimes every day. Nothing could have prepared me for this past February 18th. When she fell and was rushed to the ER for 10 days, she stayed in observation in tremendous pain. When I discovered that they were verbally abusing her in the rehab, I moved her. I didn't care if she could walk or not. If it was not for the RN Calvin, he was also in the military, by the way. You understand, at South Point. We would never have known her hip was broken. To Dr. Joseph Tramer at Hillcrest, who discovered my mom also had a torn ACL, meniscus, and a broken hip. My mother had been in so much pain since February 18th through March 7th, and by the time her hip was replaced, her spirit was broken. I cannot thank Anna Maria, Dr. Tramer, and his staff for easing my mother's suffering. They controlled her pain and made her comfortable until we moved her into hospice. What happened to my mother didn't have to happen to anybody. Her painful experience was unnecessary and preventable. It is a lesson that we advocate for our loved ones and make sure they receive diligent care they need. To my village, thank you for letting me cry to you daily. Thank you for coming in and spending the last week with my mom. I don't know if I could ever repay this. Diane Jackson, my sister from another mother, thank you for taking such good care of my mom. To Katya and Shirley and Marjorie, thank you for helping me on a day-to-day. To Mrs. Melnick, I'm so grateful for your enduring friendship with my mother. I'll never forget your kindness when you came to sit with me during my mother's emergency surgery so I wasn't by myself. Cheryl, thank you for proofing this, getting it printed out. Lisa, I know this last night weeks have not been easy, but you always took my phone calls. Mom, you were the best of moms. I'm so blessed for having you and Daddy. Thank you for giving me the world. You were always my number one cheerleader and always in my corner. I'm not sure what I would have done without you. I'm sorry that the pain you suffered for the past few months, but take some solace in knowing that you're now at peace. Please tell Daddy that I miss him, and I know your feet will never be cold again. Tell Grandma and Grandpa I miss them terribly until we meet again. Thank you.
I'll just start by saying that I'm very thankful for my sister Amy. Life for me, and without getting into too much transparency, has not been easy over the last few 14 months, and that really left my sister on her own because I'm battling cancer and I needed to be able to be back in the Bay Area taking care of myself a lot, and having surgery. So Amy was a champion, and there isn't anybody that I wouldn't sing her praises to for how she took care of my mother and loved my mother. And she's right, she must have called me 3,000 times a day, and I always answered as much as I could, and I'm so thankful for everything you did, Amy. But I want to talk about is my mom. And what I want to talk about is like these enduring memories I have of my mom. So, and some people have already heard these, so I apologize if you're hearing them again, but like one of my favorite times, and when I was a little girl, was bath time. She would put so much shampoo in our hair and say, "What animal do you want?" And I'd be like, "Today, Mom, I want an elephant." And then, of course, no elephant came to be, but she'd say, "Here's your elephant." And then I'd stand up in the little bathtub and be like, "Here's my elephant." and she just was so wonderful. And I was telling everybody who would listen about how she would, when we were kids and even as teenagers, we could lay down on her lap, down like this, and she would play the piano on her back. And it was just so much fun to get your piano played. And it was just really fun memories. And in high school, we watched every Heart to Heart and all those kind of shows together. Of course, I watched them alone really because she would fall asleep. But that was, you couldn't even take her to a movie. Fletcher and I would take her to a movie and we couldn't even get past it. I say that my mom's the reason that I love ballet. I've had season ballet tickets, and every time she would come to town and it was ballet season, we would go, but she's the reason we love ballet. And Amy and I are cultured. You'd come home at lunch and you'd walk in the door, and if it wasn't Harry Belafonte or Nat King Cole, it was West Side Story, or she loved the music from South Pacific and Oklahoma, and she would take us to plays with my grandparents. We would go down to Akron to Kenley Players, and the kind of man my father was, he enjoyed that stuff too, but he was more a big band guy, and she just made sure Amy and I knew every single Broadway show, and that we loved that stuff. And those are values that are just important. I think that the Rabbi Latofsky mentioned that she told me once, she sat me down and said, I wanted tough girls. I wasn't a very tough lady. But none of that was true. She was a really tough lady, but I think her perception of the time when she grew up, she didn't think she was tough, and she was strong, and she lasted 17 and a half years without my father. For those of you who knew them as a couple, I want to tell you, that alone, without him, Calvin Kossiver, her husband, is just showing how tough she was and how strong of a woman she was. And I mean, I told Fletcher over and over again about those garden days. Mom and Dad would come pick us up from Sunday school. I don't know, Amy and I would be doing whatever we were doing in the house, and they were out in the backyard gardening. And that is what they did together, and they showed dogs together, and they had this beautiful relationship. So I just want to say that there's stories of like this on, and one of the things I want to say, and I've heard it before, but when I heard it on this TV show, my favorite TV show, and I think it's because of my father, it is NCIS, which is about Marines and crime, and one of the characters died, and they mentioned that you die twice. You die once when you leave your body and whatever you believe about that, and then you die when people stop talking about you. So what I'm going to ask everybody here to do is make sure that you find a Deanne Kossiver story and tell it, or call Amy and I and have us tell you one, because I don't want to lose her again, and I can't lose her again. But I fought all year to be able to make sure that she didn't have to bury a daughter, and I just want to say that I am so thankful that she was my mom, and I was so thankful that I have a few more things to say. I'm sorry, just one more thing, a couple more things I'll say is one, like everybody who wrote to me, like, because I have plenty of friends who are not here with living in California, and almost all my friends have met my mom, and they all would say how warm and welcoming she was. I wrote to my 3 high school, my friend Claudia, my friend Georgia, my friend Debbie Palermo, and they were like, we loved coming to your house. We loved being in your house. We loved everything about like your mom's welcomingness and her warmth, and the way, and you need to know the way she took care of Cheryl when Cheryl needed her, and the way that she loved Fletcher, and her and Fletcher had this relationship that I can't begin to tell you was the cutest thing. This like little woman with her thing, and then this big man here walking down. He made sure she got everywhere safe. When she needed the TV changed, because we stream everything and she couldn't figure out streaming, he was right there. Fletcher, I don't know what I did with the TV. He's shaking his head. And then they would go out to lunch together. So she just warmed and welcomed him. And of course, the last thing that I'll always be thankful for is, and this is both parents, but the love for animals. And my friend Claudia says that when she goes, she's animal welfare worker, I should tell you that. She works in Maryland in animal welfare. And when she goes to animal welfare conferences, she literally says to everybody there when they walk around the room and say, why, like, are you in this? She says, because of Mrs. Kossiver and the way she took care of her pets. She said, I had one little cat named Penny, but the Kossivers had lots of pets, and the way we watch Mrs. Kossiver take care of pets this is why I'm in animal welfare. So this woman, by the way that she welcomed people in her home and the way that she lived her life, really affected everybody around them, and we are better people for it. So again, I'm going to say, tell a story about Deanne Kossiver out loud. Call Amy or I and say, give me a mom's story, because I only told a few, because Mom and I traveled together. Mississippi, we went down the Mississippi in a boat. It was fun with Mom traveling. So please, and thank you for indulging me. I probably spoke too long, but there's stories for days, and she was just wonderful, and you were all blessed to have known her. Thank you.
This is going to be a very tough act to follow. All 3 of you are beautiful. I just want to begin. Rabbi Latovsky said a very beautiful psalm. I want to read one more psalm that we're all familiar with, Psalm 23. Mizmor David Adonai Roi Lo Echsar Bino Steshe Yarbitzeni Amei Menuchos Yinahaleni Nafshi Yeshovi V'Amcheni V'Magli Tzedek V'Ma'an Shemo Gam Ki Eileh V'Gei Shal Moves Lo Iro Ki Ato Yimadi Shiftecho Mishantecha Hema Yinachamuni Tarach Lefonai Shulchan Neged Sororoi Dishanta B'Shem Roshi Hasi Rebaya Achto B'Chesed Yerdefuni Kol Yimei Chayoi V'Shavti V'Veis Adonai Le'orech Yomim. The wording may sound a little different. They've actually changed some of the phrases now. The Psalm of David, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. Usually I shall not want. These some of the interesting changes. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul. He guides me in righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord the length of days. So I must tell you, I didn't know Mrs. Kossiver from her younger days. I really got to know her through Amy, and I had the pleasure of meeting Lisa once or twice. But I really got to know her in a certain way, and I learned a lot about her just listening to some of the stories here today. I remember visiting, you talked about her relationship with pets. So I'm sure Amy remembers, I don't do well with pets.
That's why I'm laughing.
I've actually gotten better, because now I'm not, I used to be petrified of pets. When I first came in to visit her in your home,
You put them away.
You had to put them away. I thank God much better now. Little ones I can handle, big ones they still have to move away, but I've definitely gotten better. My wife is in shock, but I've definitely gotten better. But anyway, I have very fond memories of visiting the home, again, because I became friendly with Amy, and I got to know her, and she was just such a lovely, warm, loving, friendly kind of person. As the rabbis put it, who is a person who's loved, someone who loves others is loved. She was the kind of person you felt. Here was somewhat of a stranger coming into her world, and I felt like she loved me. She was just a very warm, caring person. Whether I saw her at the nursing home, whether I saw her at home, whenever I saw her, she was always very kind, welcoming, always made me feel like $1 million. You know, rabbis sometimes have to learn. It's a trick we learn as rabbis sometimes to know when you should visit, when you shouldn't visit. Sometimes you visit people and they're really not in the mood, and you have to realize, maybe I don't belong here. But she always made me feel, even if she wasn't feeling great, she always made me feel comfortable in her home, in that environment of hers. And by the way, you mentioned something about favorite TV program about the Navy. Mine was Mikhail's Navy. I don't know if any of you remember that show, but just showing off my age. But she was always warm and friendly and had a nice sense of humor. And I always remember when Amy talked about her father and his strength and how he really was the strength that both that kept the home together and all that, and the love and the warmth that she continued to bring to her family after his passing. And I would actually say that I don't think in Amy's eyes that her father, you mentioned a comment about losing a parent and always talking about that. I don't think Amy ever forgot talking about your father. Always talks about your father. Even though it's 17, 18 years, and I'm sure, God willing, for many more years, she'll be talking all about your mother, because she was so much part of your lives in so many ways. And she set a wonderful example for you. She set an example. What I thought of when I was thinking about this early this morning was the fact that Amy made a decision to sort of change the route, a little bit of her life, of how she was going in terms of becoming more connected in the Orthodox community, and it didn't faze your mother at all. She was very proud. I think she was very thrilled at the fact that she had children with different lifestyles, in a sense, but she was proud of both of you, and it didn't trouble her at all. Even though maybe her personal lifestyle was a little different than yours, she was very proud of it. She was very proud of her heritage. She was proud of being a Jew, and from what I understand from your father, was very proud of it also being a Jew. And even though you may have taken a different approach, a little bit of a different spin on it, it didn't trouble her at all. So he was very proud of everything, and that takes a lot of courage. It's not always easy sometimes when you see people going in different directions. Sometimes people come very insecure about their station. Mine isn't good enough. What I do isn't good enough. It didn't seem to trouble her. She was very proud of her accomplishments, whether it was Lisa and her accomplishments or whether it was Amy and her accomplishments. Her life was a very, 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 very mature approach that she had. That's how she watched her children as they grew and developed in their own directions. So I just want to leave you with this thought, that as we talk about a person, you have to bring her to her final rest, as I think you said so beautifully, Lisa, it's not her final rest, because we have an interesting thing. Our rabbis once said it very well. They said, we have a tradition, we put a stone up. We put a matzeva, we put a stone up to remember somebody. Our rabbis once said, righteous people don't need a stone. Why? Because ma'asehem, their actions, matzevosam, their actions are their eternity. We go to a cemetery, we visit people's graves, and we sometimes look at the little notes that says on them, telling us a little bit, trying to capture the lives of that person. But a righteous person, a person who lives a good life, a person who raised a wonderful family, that's her legacy. Her legacy, she passes on that tradition to her family. So ma'asehem, matzevosam. Their actions are really their greatest legacy. They live on. We live on to our children and our grandchildren. We live on through our families. We look back at our ancestors. You come and visit a cemetery, and you look at the family, and you remember all these people, and they passed themselves on through us. That's the beauty in our religion, that we keep passing on tradition. We're very big into tradition, and that's such a beautiful thing. So I'd like to conclude by saying, we always tell people, one of my classic lines I like to end when I finish my short remarks, because I think Rabbi Latovsky really covered her younger years, and I didn't have the pleasure of knowing her then. But that we talk about the life of someone, we say that we hope that she will be a true Melitza Yosher. She will be someone who can go up to the heavenly court and say, I did what I was supposed to do. I raised a wonderful family. I was a person who cared and loved people. She made people feel comfortable in her presence. That's what life's all about. And that we should continue, we should be able to continue. I see every once in a while when Amy comes to shul, we have that little wave. She sees me and I see her. She knows exactly how to catch my attention. I give her a wave.
I'm in the front row, you can't miss me.
Yeah, you're in the front row, and I have the unfortunate luck of sitting on top on the front. So we sort of wave to each other, to see each other, remember each other, and that we should remember the good times. And again, as I said, she didn't live long enough. She should have lived longer, but she lived a fulfilled life. We say she may not have had a richas shanim. She could have lived longer, but she had a richas yamim. Every day was meaningful. Every day was another day of commitment, of love, of dedication, of service, and that's not something that's very little. So we should continue keeping this relationship, and we should all be able to benefit from the relationship that we all have with the Kossiver family. And may God give both Amy and Lisa the strength to get through this difficult period and use it as a time to reflect on the so many beautiful years you had together as a family. So we're now going to just hear the Kriya now, and then we'll go outside, I guess, to do the burial.
You know, do it.
She's going to begin with the blessings. We'll stand up together. Say the blessing. Let's bless us.